Next on here, what I want to talk about is display. And that's how you view things in these viewports. Notice that these look like essentially wireframes, right? They don't look like solid objects. And that's because the view that we're looking at, or the display mode, is wireframe. The way to change this, you can either do it under the View tab, and notice how wireframe is selected. Here's all the other view options here. Or you can drop down on the small arrow to the right of the word, and right here are all the options. So I'm going to change it to shaded. Notice now they are shaded objects, right? And this is only for how the display looks. So it's just how you visually want to see what you're 3D modeling. Typically, I like to set everything to shaded mode. So I would left click on all those and change them all to shaded mode, like that. Sometimes in perspective mode, I will switch over to ghosted. The reason why I switch over to ghosted mode is so you can see through, but also clearly see that it's solid. Okay? I could see the back side of this cube, so I could select the back side of this cube if I wanted to. Whereas in shaded mode, you can't see through it, so it's a little difficult to say, oh, I'm going to select the back side of that cube from this view. So that is a display functions. So I'm going to keep everything top, front, and right are going to be in shaded. And for now, perspective, I'm going to put into ghosted mode. Okay, so earlier I asked everybody to turn on their O-snaps. So, O-snap, there it is. And I asked you to check mark endpoint and midpoint. I'm going to show you how the O-snap works. So these are considered objects, which is what the O is for O-snap, an object. Object snap is what it means. So what we're going to do first is learn how to move an object, but we're going to move an object to snap from one object point to another object's point. Okay? So we're going to go to the Transform tab, and we're going to select Move. And whenever you're doing a command, always look at the command line. It's always going to ask you a question or give you an option. Right now, what is it asking me? It says select object to move, right? So I'm going to go ahead and select this cube, the one on the left. Now notice that it says press enter when done. So that means I could select more objects if I wanted to. However, I just want to select the one object. So I'm going to press enter. And now it says point to move from. So now I have to select a point. Now this is where your O-snaps come into play. Notice that when I hover over the corner here, it snaps to that and it says end. The only reason it does that is because my O-snap is turned on, right? Now I told you to turn on endpoint and midpoint, so that means at the midpoint between this endpoint here and this endpoint here, there should be a midpoint snap. There it is. So notice how I could select the midpoint of that edge, this edge here. So options is endpoint, midpoint, and endpoint. I'm going to select an endpoint, and now I have free reign to move this object around thanks to selecting that endpoint. And I could move it to the midpoint of this object, right? So I'm going to move it, hover over till I see midpoint, and then click. Now I just moved those two objects over the top of each other, right? So now these two objects are intersecting. So that's how you move something. The only way I was able to select the cube in the first place is because I had my O-snap turned on. If this was not turned on and I tried to move something, which I'll do right here, I'll select the object, press enter. Notice how I can't select the corner. Look where it's it looks like in perspective I'm trying to select it, right? Watch, I'll show you. But where is my cursor really? Way off over here, right? So it looks like here I'm trying to select it, but really my cursor is like somewhere random. And the reason being is because the object snap is turned off, right? So if I ask you to turn on your object snap so you can move objects around, the only way you're going to be able to select an object is by turning it on. So I'm going to turn it back on, and hopefully that sinks in for everybody and you kind of get that, because we're going to start moving objects in the next class, and you should be able to understand how to move an object fairly easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this object back by just doing undo. So I'm going to do edit and undo. And it's going to just bring my cube back to where it was originally. Just because I want to put it back where it was originally, just wanted to show you how to move something. Now, the next thing I want to show you how to do is make a copy. So, under the same exact drop-down, right under Move, is the word Copy. So I'm going to click Copy. And what does my command line ask me to do? Select an object to copy, right? So I'm going to select an object. I'll select that same box again. And now it asks press Enter when done. I don't want to select any more boxes, so I'm going to press Enter. And now it says point to copy from. So just like the Move command, but now it's copying. So select a point. With your object snapped on, I'm going to select the end point of one of the corners of this cube. And now I can make a copy, right? So I can copy it. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it to the back side of it and snap it there. So I'm going to snap it to the back side. Now notice that I still have the availability to continue copying things, which I could if I wanted to. However, I think this proves the point of how to make a copy. In order to stop making copies, you have to hit Escape on your keyboard. Now the copy command has ended. That is how you make a copy of an object. You may be required to make copies of things. Sometimes rather than rebuilding something, you might want to make a copy of it and modify it rather than rebuild it. So keep that in mind. The next thing on here is rotate. I'll show you how to do a rotation. So go ahead and click the rotate under the transform drop down. Now it's kind of silly to rotate a cube because you won't get to see it actually rotating, right? Because it's the exact same shape. But the cylinder here, we can rotate. So I'm going to just zoom out a little bit and kind of zoom towards it. Notice that when you zoom, wherever your cursor is, that's where it zooms towards, right? So if you're kind of zooming somewhere random, zoom out, put your cursor on the object, and then zoom into that object, right? It'll zoom directly into that object. Well, so what I'm going to do is I've already gone to transform rotate, and now it's asking me select object to rotate. So I'll select this object and press Enter when done. Now it says center of rotation, right? So I get to choose a point. Now it looks like the only thing that I'm able to snap to right now is, oh, looks like I can snap to an endpoint, and that's about it, right? Now typically it looks like there's a midpoint somewhere. It must be the midpoint of the cylinder, right? So the cylinder has midpoints and endpoints. Now typically these are quadrants, right? In a circle, the four sides of a sides, I guess. The 4 points of a circle is a quadrant. Well, we do have under the object snap, which you don't have to turn it on, but I just want you to be aware, there is a quadrant button, right? So when you're dealing with circles or circular objects, you should turn this object snap on, so that way you can select the quadrant of a circle. There's also the center of a circle as well. So sometimes you may need to select something at the center of the object. You would want to turn on this object snap by check marking it in order to make that work. But we will deal with just now with just the endpoint. So what I'm going to do is select the endpoint here, which is just one of the endpoints, pretty much where that line is. And now it's asking me angle or reference point. Now, right now I probably want to click somewhere, but I'm not going to click yet. The other option would be to type in a degree. So you could type in 90, right? You could say 90 degrees. So 90 in the command line and press enter, and it rotated it 90 degrees, right? But let's try that again. I'm going to go transform, rotate. I'm going to select that endpoint. And now before I click on a point, what I'm going to go ahead and do at the bottom here is turn on my ortho. So I'm going to click the ortho button. So now I have two bolded, right? Ortho and object snap. Now the reason why I'm selecting ortho is so that way when I go to rotate this, do you see how it only allows you to go in certain directions, right? It doesn't allow you to just rotate from anywhere. Your cursor has become restricted. So I'm going to go ahead and just point in this direction. click, and now I have the ability to rotate this thing at 90-degree angles. See that? So this is 90 degrees rotation, 180-degree rotation, right? 270 as I rotate around, and then back around again to 0 or 360 rotation, right? Now, you could, at any point, turn on and off your ortho, right? I could turn off my ortho right now by clicking it, and now I have the ability to rotate it at any degree I want, right? Now, the way you're going to know what your degree is, again, is by looking at the bottom of your Rhino screen. Right here, it tells you. Right now, I have a rotation of 180. As soon as you start to slowly rotate this thing around, see how it changes? I'm at 295. That's my angle of rotation right now, right there. That's at 315, right? So you can actually see by looking right here at exactly what your rotation is. So I'm just going to go ahead and rotate it at random. Doesn't really matter. Just get the feel for how to rotate an object around. There's one last one I want to show you before I end this tutorial video here, and it's called Rotate 3D. So this last rotation allowed me to take things and rotate them like this, right? Only like this, side to side. This next one will allow you to take an object and rotate it onto its side. So rather than going in a circle like this, you can actually take something and flip it onto its side. Okay? So we're going to do that with the cylinder. So go ahead and drop down, transform, rotate 3D. Go ahead and click Rotate 3D. Select your object. It's going to be this cylinder here. Select it. Now press Enter when done. So select object to rotate, press Enter. Now it asks Start of Rotation Axis. So I'm going to select the bottom endpoint, right, the lower side of my cylinder. Now what it's asking is select your axis of rotation. So how do you want this thing to hinge, right? Now, depending on which directionality you choose, which you should turn on your ortho for this. So everybody go ahead and turn on your ortho. Now you get to choose your axis. Do you want it to rotate this way, which means if your axis is like this, it's going to rotate like that, right? If your axis is the other direction, which is this way, it's going to rotate like this. Okay? So you choose your axis first, right? So I'm going to just go ahead and choose one axis so everybody can see. So I'm just going to go this way. Now it's going to give you another axis choice, which is going to be perpendicular to your original one, right? So perpendicular. And I'm going to click, and now I have the ability to rotate this thing, right? So there it is. I could flip it onto its side. I could make it go upside down if I wanted to. A quick command to quickly turn off your ortho but not have to click the button is Shift. If you hold down the Shift button while doing any rotation, it will temporarily disable your ortho, right? So see how I can kind of go wherever I want right now? The reason why I can do that is because I'm holding the Shift key on the keyboard. As soon as I let off, it snaps right to 90 degrees. So I will no longer be clicking the ortho button anymore. I'm just going to leave it on always, right? So the ortho button down here, I'm going to leave it on always. Whenever I need to not use ortho, I'm going to hold down Shift, okay? And I'll let you know when I'm going to hold down Shift to release the ortho from working. So I'm just going to put this thing on its side, and that's how you rotate something three-dimensionally. As far as these first 1, 2, 3, and 4 commands go, please practice this. There's no official assignment with this, but I want you to practice these few commands here as much as possible because you're going to be utilizing these 4 commands a lot. Okay? These are like the basic things that you can do as far as modifying an object, or moving it, copying it, rotating it, and rotating it three-dimensionally.